Today on the Sane Estate, the COVID Chronicles. Yes, we're going to go back in time to 2020 and sort of, rehash some of the things that have occurred during that period of the COVID pandemic. And I've got a fantastic guest today to talk about this with us, who's written a book that everyone should read because it is definitely something that we all should be aware of, and that is the different theories and hypotheses of the origins of COVID, for one. And of course, being that Anthony Fauci's back in the news, this is another reason why we're here to talk about Bill's book. Bill Sargent returns for an encore performance, but this time with even more information than before because he is a walking encyclopedia.
Thank you very much.
All right. You want to say something already?
Sure. No, go ahead.
I need to do the proper introduction.
Okay.
Right. And we're talking about gain of function. That's another term getting thrown around, right? And basically, what happens when science, secrecy, politics, and fear all cough into the same room. Not coughing, though. I'm just saying so. I'm John Woolforth, your harried host who is desperately in need of a haircut. But podcasts are more important, especially when we talk about important subjects like the pandemic's origins. And, more or less, I think the biggest thing we want to get out of today's discussion is where are we going with our perception of science in this world. So, welcome to the Sane Estate, where stories unfold one guest conversation at a time, unless the conversation mutates into three separate controversies and refuses to wear a mask. Bill, as we know, is a local author, environmentalist, and science writer whose work often looks at the uneasy places where nature, human behavior, public policy, and unintended consequences collide. And boy, is that a mess. This time we're focusing on his book, Terror by Error, the COVID Chronicles. Sounds like it would be a cool sci-fi TV show, wouldn't it?
It would, yeah.
Except we lived it.
Yep.
I mean,
I don't know if we want to relive it.
I tell you, I remember watching the movie Outbreak when that came out, 30 years ago, and I was freaked out.
Yeah. Right? And then the Hot Zone, of course, was another
one, and then there's been a few since then too.
Right. Yeah.
But it's fantastic. It's not fantastic if it happens.
Yeah.
But it's fascinating.
Yes.
To read this stuff. So, your book looks at COVID through a wider historical lens, including medical research, biological warfare, lab accidents, public health failures, and the very uncomfortable possibility that some disasters are not so much acts of nature as acts of human confidence gone wrong. And, again, where did COVID come from? Is it
great?
Who cares anyway, right?
Yeah.
It came and went. That's all. Yeah. Anyway, Was it the result of zoonotic spillover? Was it a virus that moves naturally from animals to humans? Was it connected to a laboratory accident?
Yeah.
Or is the most honest answer still that we don't have a freaking clue?
Right. Yeah.
Because transparency, we don't have enough transparency, too many politics, and institutional self-protection that sort of gets in the way, right?
The two hypotheses are, one, that it was a spillover event, which means that it jumped from nature to humans through some kind of animal like a bat. But the problem with that scenario is that there are no horseshoe bats that live around Wuhan. The closest bats come from thousands of miles away. So the theory is that people were catching the bats thousands of miles to the south, bringing them to the Wuhan market, and then the bats were living with other animals, and somehow the virus, a similar virus, went from one of the bats to some other animal, and we don't know yet what that other animal is. There's a couple of different ideas.
Yeah.
And then people picked it up from the Wuhan market.
Okay.
So there's a lot of sort of coincidence that all have to fit together. So the other hypothesis, and I think it's the more logical one and the simpler one, you had lots of horseshoe bats in the Wuhan laboratory.
Right.
People were working on them, and one of the things that they were doing is doing gain of function research. So what you do with gain of function research is you remove some of the viruses from the bat.
Hold you right there.
Yeah.
Can we backtrack just a second and
Yeah.
give me a textbook definition of what gain of function is?
Essentially, well, let me explain how it works, and that will sort of explain what it is.
Okay.
So what they were doing is they were taking a virus out of the bat and then injecting it into a ferret. Ferrets are very similar to humans. They have a similar physiology, similar lungs, and things like that. So they get a lot of diseases that we get. So they would go into the ferret, and then the virus would mutate, and then they'd put it in another ferret, and it would mutate some more, and then another ferret, until it finally gained the function of being more virulent and more communicable. So it would be more contagious and a stronger virus.
Okay.
And so that's, that's what they were doing. That's what gain of function is. And, if you're familiar with ferrets or any little animal like that, they wiggle around a lot. And if they have a disease, they're going to be sneezing. So if you're trying to inject one, it's very easy for you to jab yourself in the finger,
Right.
and give yourself whatever virus is that you're working on. So I think that's the most likely scenario, that a technician was working with one of these ferrets. And they're in biohazard suits.
Sure.
They're holding a wiggling animal. They're under a lot of pressure. There's been several instances, similar things. There was actually a woman based in BU who stabbed herself with the Ebola virus and died.
I heard about that.
And I think there was a similar thing with Marburg. And if you talk to any doctor, they'll probably say, well, yeah, I stabbed myself, 5 years ago. Just look at how many mistakes are made in a medical practice.
Sure.
In your own doctor's office. And there was one study that said there's a lab accident that occurs about every 2 weeks that would be sufficient to cause, problems like this. So I just think that's, and I was writing a book about developing vaccines for the war in Iraq,
Right.
Because we knew that they had anthrax and they were using as a biological weapon. So we wanted to develop a vaccine against anthrax. And the guy who was head of our program in the United States was Fouad El-Hibri, who came from Lebanon. Mm-hmm. And he was set up near Fort Detrick, which is where our biological warfare had been conducted. And
Really?
I called him several times to set up interviews. And we always had it, all set up, and I was going to go down in 2 days, and I bought my ticket, and then I'd get a call at the last minute, and somebody was getting married, and they were going to Europe and stuff like that. And then each time someone was assassinated within 20 miles of the office that I was going to, close to Fort Detrick. This was also during the time of the anthrax mailings.
Right.
And so I got fairly paranoid. I said, what's going on here? Am I going to be lured down?
That's
gotten rid of?
a little scary.
Yes, and I actually called the CIA, and I said, is there any connection between these assassinations and the anthrax mailings? And I thought they were going to just hang up the phone and say, there's another kook. And they said, yes, we've been looking into that, and I'll put you in touch with the guy who's doing the research on it.
Interesting.
And we got together, and we realized the timing didn't quite fit. But that's sort of indicative. crisis that you could get into. And the same thing happened with COVID. There were all kinds of, different things going. I think in the early days, there were Chinese scientists who were telling their American counterparts that there had been a terrible accident, and those guys disappeared. And so we don't really know. But I think there were a lot of indications that they knew that somebody had blown it, and they had essentially started a pandemic. And they were trying to warn us in the beginning.
And we know that their warnings or their conveying information regarding a lab accident or incident was specifically COVID in this case,
Oh, yes. Well, they didn't know what it was yet, but they knew there had been a lab accident, and they knew that there was
a virus.
That there was a virus, and they hadn't given it a name yet.
Yeah. Why is it that gain of function? So you're basically creating a stronger virus.
Yeah.
What's the objective? To create a stronger virus, to create a stronger immunity to such viruses?
What they want to do is they want to figure out how they think the virus is going to evolve. So they're doing it artificially to figure out how it might happen naturally.
And get a step ahead of it.
Yeah. And yes, so that they can develop a vaccine, so that they know, what the virus is to develop the vaccine. So it has a use. We used to do it in this country, but a lot of scientists got together and they said, no, it's too risky, it's too dangerous. So we, shipped it out to China.
So we're still doing it. We just can't do it here.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
I don't.
And I think that's one thing that Fauci said, is that he wanted a forum so he could explain why we were doing gain of function, but he never got that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so when this was all happening, I mean, what turned you on to it? Like, what sort of?
I was
made you
actually
think the lab
I was writing the book about the vaccine chronicles, and I was actually looking into different lab leaks, the different accidents that occurred in biological laboratories, and I was looking at the theory that is kind of on the fringes of public health, that a lot of the tick diseases that we have came from research that we were doing on ticks.
So just through coincidence, you were writing a book about vaccines.
At
the time COVID's resurgent.
Yeah, and I was looking at that. Well, what happened with the tick research? There was a guy called Willy Bergdorfer, who was Swiss.
Okay.
And he was sort of famous for injecting bacteria and viruses into ticks, and he used Swiss watchmaking tools to do it. And I guess he had very, very good technique. And he was doing it initially for, public health. There was a public health laboratory out in Montana. It was the Rocky Mountain. They were looking at Rocky Mountain spotted fever. And then the government changed that so that they were actually working on biological warfare. Yeah. And so he kept on doing that. This was during the Cuban Missile Crisis. And so what they were doing is they were injecting bacteria, and there were 3 different agents that they'd inject into the ticks. And then there was a young CIA recruit, and he was told to go out to a certain, airport in Florida, this little out-of-the-way airport. And he went out there, and he got on the plane, and they flew out over Cuba. And then he was told to open up the box in front of him and throw the contents out. And he opened up the box, and it was full of hundreds of thousands of ticks. So he dumped the ticks. They flew back, and the next day or a couple days later, his son came down with a horrible flu, and was hospitalized. And this recruit went to his commanding officer and he said, was there any connection with my son getting sick and what we did that night when we were flying over the Caribbean? And his commanding officer said, I can't give you any details. The only thing I can tell you is burn all the clothes you were wearing that night.
Oh, boy.
So,
Wow.
so that same sort of thing was being done in what I call the Bad Plum Island.
Yes.
There's a Plum Island animal, it's the Animal Disease Research Institute, which is in Long Island Sound, right opposite Lyme, Connecticut.
Yes.
And often
that's where they got the name?
Yes.
Holy crap.
So they had several times they'd lose the electricity, and they had a security system where they were essentially blowing air constantly into the laboratory. And then when that broke down, all of a sudden they could get air, in and out of the laboratory.
Yeah.
And the ticks escaped. They got picked up by migratory birds. So if you look at if you get a very close up of a heron or an egret, often they'll have 20 or 30 ticks right around their eyes. And so the idea is they flew over to Lyme, Connecticut, and that's where they first picked up this new disease. And then it was spread up and down the East Coast.
So,
wow. So when I was looking into this, and then I heard about COVID, I said, wow, it could be the same thing. It could be a lab accident similar to what happened in this country. And I haven't seen anything that's convinced me otherwise.
So let me just put this together. So what happened on Plum Island in Long Island Sound?
Yeah.
Versus what happened over Cuba are two different things that led to this disease developing?
It was all part of it. I mean, they were creating a biological weapon when they were putting the agents into the ticks that were dropped over Cuba. They only did it once, and then they figured that they were just blowing out to sea. They also did two experiments where they used a non-lethal bacteria, and they had it in glass jars, and they went on the New York subway system and broke the glass jars, releasing this bacteria to all the people that were on the subway. They also did it in San Francisco, same thing, a non-lethal bacteria. Lots of people picked it up, and actually a couple people got very sick. So that was an experiment that we were doing on our own, on our own population.
And this is the early 60s?
This would have been in the 60s and 70s. And then actually, so we were doing a lot of biological warfare right until, and you know who stopped it? Tricky Dicky Nixon.
Really?
And what happened, there's a scientist called Matt Methelson who was teaching biology at Harvard, and he knew Henry Kissinger. They used to have lunch together at the faculty club, I guess.
Yeah.
And he happened to bump into him at Logan Airport, and Kissinger said, well, we have a real political problem. We're trying to, build up political capital for the war in Vietnam, and what can we do? And Messel said, well, I think you should stop doing biological warfare. And so Kissinger asked him to write up a paper, and in fact they stopped doing offensive biological warfare. They're still doing defensive research on biological.
Well, that would make sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
The government saying they're stopping something is, well, how much can you believe?
Yeah. I tend to believe that, and part of the reason I believe that is that the Russians didn't believe it. and they were doing lots of biological warfare.
Right.
And they had a very famous accident in Sverdlovsk, where dozens of people died, and they said it was because they got tainted meat, and that the Russians were surprised that American scientists bought the argument because it was totally bogus.
Oh my God!
But finally, Methelson went over and figured it out. There was a big anthrax facility there. They were producing tons and tons of anthrax, and there was a leak in the filter system. Somebody didn't turn the right knob, and it was released into the city, and a lot of people picked it up.
And this was in Russia?
That was in Russia, and the head of the Russian, what's called biopreparat, it was head of their biological warfare unit.
Yeah.
Young medical researcher, actually fairly kind of a young idealistic medical researcher initially, and all of a sudden he found himself, head of the biopreparat, and he had drivers and I forget the cars that they drove around in, and he also had a party member constantly with him, making sure he towed the line. But he came over to this country. We had some, dual inspections.
Right.
And they toured our facilities, and all of a sudden they said, well, yeah, that's right. They did. They stopped it. These were all rusting facilities.
Wow.
He defected to this country, started his own biotech company, and became a millionaire. And when I was doing research on this, I wanted to get to him, and I thought, well, I'll write a letter, and it will probably take 3 or 4 years, and maybe I can get through. And finally, I said, well, no, I'll just make a cold call. So I dialed, and sure enough, it was Ken Allebeck. and so we talked, and he's a very affable guy, and we talked about all of this. And then I'd call him several times, and it was, hi Ken, hi Bill, how you doing?
You need to be in sales because you seem to just get the right person right away.
Really?
That's freaky.
Blind luck.
I'm telling you, that's fascinating how that all just seems to pan out, right? I don't know.
Yeah.
Good vibes.
Yeah, I guess
right?
so. Yeah.
So okay, this is. So we've got the gain of function aspect, right?
Yeah, right.
Then spillover let's say lab leak versus spillover. What's the difference there? I don't understand. I obviously know what a lab leak is, but what's a spillover in a sense mean?
Spillover is just when you have a disease in an animal. For instance, HIV was originally in
monkeys. Was it?
It was in monkeys. I can't remember if it was gorillas or chimps.
Okay.
I think it was gorillas. And because people were eating bush meat, they were eating these animals, they picked up AIDS.
That's how it began.
Yeah.
Okay.
And lots and lots of infectious diseases started that way. So if you're a virologist or an epidemiologist is probably the wrong person to ask, because their whole career, everything that they've been trained, suggests that you can go out into nature and find, go back and find where the disease came from. I think one thing that's telling is that we're 6 years out from the pandemic.
Yeah.
And we still haven't found what's called the amplifier organism. So you have a reservoir organism, which was the bat, but then you had some other organism that would amplify it, and it was essentially doing its own natural gain of function.
Yeah, so it's a bridge
to make it lethal, and we haven't found what that animal is. I mean, it turns out that we were the amplifier animal.
That would make logical sense, right?
Yeah.
So based on those things, though, here's the $25,000 question: is between spillover
Yeah.
and gain of function or
Yeah.
lab leak, or I should say through animal. What am I trying to say? Like, what's the other theory? Is like,
Spillover
you know-
and lab leak. Yes.
So all right, so spillover and lab leak, right?
Yeah.
So spillover is the organic.
Right. Yeah.
It basically was through animals. It was
Right.
and so humans didn't have anything. There wasn't an error that caused that. It was just sort of.
Yeah. No, that happens in nature.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So between those two theories, hypotheses,
Yeah.
which one do you find more evidence to be true?
I think, I don't think we can say right now. I think we don't have definitive evidence for either one or the other.
So are you objectively stating this right now for yourself? I mean, do you have a thought on this?
I think the probability is fairly high that it was a lab leak. I think it's much more likely that it was a lab leak, but we don't have proof of that, but we also don't have proof of it being a spillover event, and I'm not sure that we ever will. I mean, I think the information is there, but it's probably hidden so deep in the in the Chinese archives.
It's not going to come out for 100 years.
Exactly.
Yeah. It just won't.
It's going to be like the Kennedy.
It's
Yeah.
yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I think that's the problem with human nature. It's like nobody can really deal with a mystery. They have to apply some theory or hypothesis or conspiracy aspect to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
To help them sort of feel better about it.
Right.
Wouldn't you think that's a certain or a type of behavior for humans?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're going to say his name, Dr. Anthony Fauci.
Yes.
Obviously quite controversial.
Right.
I don't quite understand why this became a thing now 6 years later, that he is back in the news and that he is testifying before Congress.
It was
taking the fifth.
Personal vendetta.
It's a personal vendetta.
Yeah. Yeah. Rand Paul just wanted to get him, and that this was a trap.
So this had been building for these 6
Oh,
years.
yeah.
I mean, how did it just came up? They had this committee all of a sudden. Like,
Yeah, right from the beginning they were at odds, Fauci is kind of a hero of mine. I think he did an excellent job with HIV and AIDS, and I think he was under immense pressure, and with very little information. And a lot of conflicting information. You mentioned earlier that I think it's mentioned in his journals that of the 12 people he was talking to, 9 of them thought it might have been a lab leak.
Yeah.
I think there were, there were a lot of people, and I think there's even more people. I think 60% of the population were polled, or 60% think that it was probably a lab leak.
So you see him as somebody who's suppressing a legitimate theory, being that he's so.
No, I think he was doing the best job that he could.
So you think he's towing the line? He's not agreeing with one or the other.
I think he wanted to have a simple explanation, so that people wouldn't, have a lot of different theories right in the beginning.
Okay.
President Trump didn't help with that.
You think?
Because he had a lot of theories on his own. It was, Dr. Google on steroids.
Well,
bleach. It could take bleach, whatever.
I think the concerning part is that people did.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it was such a small diluted amounts that it wasn't going to cause organ damage. Is that?
Who knows? Who knows?
I don't. Yeah, I would not even take the chance.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so Fauci is Would you say he's just become sort of the scapegoat of the whole,
Absolutely, absolutely.
the whole
And-
incident?
Yeah,
I mean,
and I think legally he did the only thing he could do was to plead the fifth, because anything that he would say was going to be turned around and used against him, and he could end up in jail.
so you think this whole thing, and what does this do for science and as a whole, when
Well,
you've got somebody who, again, is perceived as a charlatan now, in a sense, and all the science that he had prescribed or talked about they're trying to. It seems like the impression is it's rendered moot.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly, it certainly doesn't help science. I think he was in kind of an untenable situation, trying to be an objective scientist, but also trying to, protect people from the pandemic and also protect the institution that he was in. So it was, he was doing the best he could. I'm glad I wasn't in that position.
Right. So, but the overall dismissal,
Yeah.
would you say that the lab leak theory was sort of just cast aside, sort of from the beginning?
Yeah, yeah, and that. I mean, it could have been, a very positive scientific discussion. I mean, scientists are famous for being skeptical and, knocking somebody else's ideas, and that's kind of the way science works.
Right.
And, so you should have had a group of objective scientists sitting in the same room hashing this out. This reminds me, I was covering the Montserrat volcano a number of years ago, and there was a press release that came out from the Montserrat Volcano Observatory, and they said there's a 2 out of 3 chance that the volcano is going to go dormant, and there's a 1 out of 3 chance that it's going to, explode, severely. And then there was, I think, if I've got the numbers right, there was a 2 out of 5% chance that it was going to stay the same. And I said, boy, those are incredible. They must have incredible instruments to figure this all out. So I asked the chief scientist, I said, well, how did you come up with these numbers? And he said, well, I had five experts. I locked them in the room, and I told them to, they couldn't come out until they gave me some numbers. So that's how he got his numbers. And of course, once you have a number, people tend to think that that's that's solid information.
Okay.
But it was really just 5 opinions.
Well, that doesn't say a whole lot for scientific method in that case.
No.
But being that is basically scientific method, the way that it seems to be right now, is sort of on trial. I mean, we're looking, a lot of people are sort of rebelling against the concept or the science as a viable methodology for determining truths. Why do you think that is? Why are we? What other way is there to go?
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, I think it's political. And people are, and people like Kennedy are not helping the process.
The Bill Kennedy?
What's his name? Robert F. Jr.
Oh, Robert F. Oh, yeah.
Right, yeah.
I'm thinking Bill Cassidy, not Bill Kennedy.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. What do we do about this guy? I mean, look, I don't. I mean, I'm just gonna. I try to be objective in these conversations, but I don't think. I believe in science, and
Right.
it doesn't appear that Robert F. Kennedy believes in science
Right.
the same way.
Yeah. 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 And I think it's a matter of time and elections, and possibly things are going to change with the midterms, and hopefully things will change, in the next presidential election. What frightens me is that we are passing so many tipping points that I'm not sure we're going to be able to bring the Earth back to a healthy state. I mean, every week, we're getting wildfires, we're getting droughts, we're getting floods. Soon we'll be getting hurricanes. Just this sort of crisis after crisis.
Right.
And I think that's an indication that we've done something like interfered with the Gulf Stream, and that it's slowing down, and it's not circulating the ocean the way it should be.
What do they call that?
That's the Atlantic Meridional something, AMOC.
AMOC.
Yes,
I just thought
Atlantic.
it was like a
I think of it.
treadmill of sorts,
It's like an escalator.
or escalator.
It's an escalator. So the warm water is coming up from the south on the Gulf Stream, and then it cools and it sinks.
Yeah.
And then that is pulling more warm water up, and then the cold water creeps along the seafloor back to the south, and so it's like an escalator.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's
And if that stops, we're cooked, and it looks like it is slowing down.
it will fundamentally change the
Yeah.
ecosystem.
And now, of course, we have this super El Nino on top of that. So we got a lot of problems.
Well, I mean, I guess that it's very relevant because with climate change comes warming,
Right.
So we see this has been a concern. I don't know if anything has occurred yet, but the concern is, with the melting of the permafrost, that different types of viruses
Right.
are coming out that we have no defense against because they were out in the world millions of years ago.
Exactly. Yeah.
Nothing like that has happened yet, or it's just a concern at this point, or do we have definitive proof that is going to occur?
It's certainly a concern. I think there was an instance where they had records that people had died from smallpox, I think. And the concern was that, those people are buried in the permafrost. But when the permafrost melts, the viruses could be released.
And they said they just don't die.
That we don't know. I mean, yes, they can die. Yes. I mean, we had virtually eradicated smallpox. I think
Yeah.
the only smallpox, I think, we had some in Atlanta, Georgia, and I think Russia had some. And then probably some witch doctors, had some in Africa and South America. But we had virtually gotten rid of it. We had gotten rid of polio.
Yes.
And then we let our guards down, and, it's coming back.
And
It's like measles.
measles too.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know if I didn't confirm whether this is true, if you heard about this or not, but apparently there's at least one case of leprosy in Florida,
Yeah.
of all places,
Right.
Florida,
Right.
where the
yeah.
governor decided that, we don't need no stinking vaccinations.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, not that that's going to do anything for leprosy, but that's just sort of a bizarre,
Yeah.
where'd that come from?
Right. Yeah.
That I think there's an example, right? I mean,
Yeah.
when you're stirring the pot of, the natural order,
Right. Yeah.
Weird things are going to happen, and they're
Right,
not going to be good things. A lot of them, right?
What's the quote from Jurassic Park? Life always finds a way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it. It's funny. I actually said that. I was saying that to Joanne the other day. Like we're at the beach, and you see the beautiful. I don't even know what it is. Like some sort of succulent that's growing in the sand. I mean, it's,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And I had also read about that there's plants at the Arctic Circle.
Yeah.
And the South Pole as well. I mean,
Yeah.
anywhere, mountains, deserts,
Yeah.
deep ocean, everywhere, organisms thrive. And
Yeah.
they exist.
Yeah.
I don't think humans are that good at that stuff. I don't think we can really acclimate to, a planet that's going through a vast change
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
that we're creating.
Yeah. We're much more vulnerable to that sort of change than lots of animals have lived through it before. But my favorite animal, as you can see, is the horseshoe crab.
I love horseshoe crabs.
And they have lived through all the major extinctions, caused by asteroid hits, by volcanoes, at one point the whole Earth they called it the snowball Earth.
Yeah.
It was essentially the whole Earth was, covered with ice. And the horseshoe crabs were able to live through that.
I just saw a documentary about the Carboniferous period.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which was why we had all the big bugs,
Right.
Mostly arachnids, or I should say arachnids, but crustaceans.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And that was kind of interesting because there was climate change that when Pangea was forming,
Yeah.
or I should say, I believe it was forming.
Yeah.
When it got to a certain point in evolution where it just changed the whole climate of the planet,
Yeah.
and all these things died off, with the exception of tiny reptiles, which evolved into dinosaurs.
Right. Yeah. And the other interesting thing about that is that there had been a buildup of oxygen. They had a lot more oxygen than we have now.
It's like 35%.
So you look at the dragonflies, and they had 3-foot long wingspans.
Yes.
They were huge compared to what we have now.
And that was part of you talked about that.
Yeah, right.
And how their ability to fly and do all the things that they did was based on the level of oxygen in the atmosphere. And when that changed, it just sort of led to their demise.
Right. Yeah.
Or at least at that size, they still
got smaller and smaller. Yeah. Yeah.
But they lived, they survived, and they moved into different periods. But so there's a lot to say. I just don't think the humans have that sort of ability. We're very fragile. Let's face it.
We're fragile, but we can adapt. We're living in every environment on the earth now.
Yeah.
Through technology. We can adapt, and we are adapting. If we're going through this energy transition, which is going to make a huge difference. But even that we've baked in so much carbon dioxide into the system that even if we stopped releasing any carbon dioxide today, we still would have 30 years that would have to go through of increased warming.
So, but that says something about human technology, or the ability to advance technology, because that's sort of which is hand in hand with science. I mean,
absolutely.
One can't exist without the other. Well, I shouldn't say that. Science can exist, doesn't matter. But technology would not be where it is without science driving it.
Yeah.
And I think that's where you have the positive outlook. That, for example, I read about devices or giant systems that can suck the carbon out of the air, right? Mm-hmm. And utilize it for energy.
Right.
So those types of advancements are what gives me hope that we'll be able to ride it out and maybe adapt to some degree.
Yeah. I think I'm a little. Actually, I remember I was in Switzerland on it was sort of a junket for science writers, and we went to the company that was developing that technique, and they're using it now in Iceland, where they're removing the carbon dioxide.
Yeah.
It's still very expensive.
Right.
And
Well, yeah.
I don't think that's going to save us. I think what we have to do is switch to green energy.
Oh, absolutely. No,
yeah,
I'm not saying that's
it's not,
just go keep burning
right.
fuel, fossil fuels. Yeah, we're all
Right.
set.
Yeah.
No, that's not what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I'm saying
Yeah.
it's a way to
way,
mitigate the effects.
And I think there are other ways too that might be simpler, so that you can incorporate it directly. But we're going far afield from the COVID discussion.
Well, all of this is sort of
it's all related.
It's all related. So, but anyway, let's just jump out. I mean, for a second, one more thing, and that would be essentially after you've been writing about all this stuff that you know for years, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you think the bigger danger is nature or perhaps overconfidence in controlling it.
Oh, absolutely. Nature will do fine without us.
Without us.
And that's what nature does. When you get a species that gets overpopulated and destructive, nature usually finds a way of getting rid of that species. And so
would that be natural? Is that natural selection, or is that?
Yeah, that would be a form of natural selection.
But I've also heard that natural selection has been attacked as not necessarily accurate.
I think it's the basic tenet of biology. I think people are finding that there are different ways that it works, but they're all sort of minor changes on a major theme.
All right. Okay. So just sort of give me 3 bullet points. We'll finish with that. What is, out of all of this, where do you see things right now between Fauci's situation, the theories of COVID's origination, and essentially where we're going from here?
Well, I think we don't really definitively know where COVID came from, which is a little frightening when you think about it.
Yes.
So we don't know whether it was a lab accident or whether it came from nature. It would behoove us to find out so we could prevent the next pandemic. But right now we don't know.
But someone does, don't they?
I think somebody does. Yes. And they did have some studies that came out. I think our intelligence communities, the CIA and some of the other intelligence communities, I think the FBI, both have come out saying that they favor the lab leak hypothesis. Mm-hmm. So I think they do have some information, from China that's secret. So at some point, maybe when we're long dead, that will come out.
Well, what do you say to naysayers is related to science that say, point out things, like the fact that like the way that things move through the COVID, right? We didn't know how effective masks were. Then there was the shutdowns. Then there was try this.
Yeah.
But what do people get wrong about the scientific method? Isn't that one of the things is that you have to let it play out and things will change. I mean, what information is valid today might change tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, we were dealing with a lot of unknowns at that point. But I think where the scientific method worked to perfection is finally developing a vaccine.
Yeah.
I mean, that was extraordinary that happened. So and so quickly.
And are people mistaken when they think that COVID just came out? I mean, that the vaccine came out of nowhere. It was developed based on decades of research.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, so that's the thing. And a lot of people don't.
Yeah.
In my experience, I've seen people who just don't
get it,
know that or understand
right.
that, and it's like because that's their fear
Right.
of not taking it.
Right. Yeah.
All right. Well, this is crazy that this still is an unresolved subject, because, as we know, COVID is probably it's not the first and it's not the last virus that is going to come for humanity, right?
Right.
Okay. So, Bill, thank you so much again for all the information.
Thank you.
I think this is valuable information. I learned a bunch of things, and I hope you did too. The COVID origin debate is not just about one virus, one lab, one market, or one public official. It's about how much risk we're willing to tolerate in the name of scientific progress, how much secrecy we accept from institutions, and how quickly public trust can collapse when people feel they're being managed instead of informed. When COVID began whether it began through natural spillover, a lab accident, or some other chain of events, we don't fully understand. The larger question still is, are we able to learn from it and continue to trust science? New episodes of The Sane Estate premiere Mondays at noon on YouTube and on Wednesdays at 7:30 p.m. on iCam, Comcast Channel 9, and Verizon Channel 33. For any fans who are waiting for the lightning round, we are not having one today because I felt this subject was more important to get as much info out of Bill as we can. If you want to be a guest, the Sane Estate, like a hotel, is always looking for new ones. Artists, business owners, writers, rule breakers, civic leaders, organizers, and anyone helping shape life here in our little coastal town. If you know someone or want to be on, email guest@saneestate.com or visit saneestate.com and fill out the contact form. You bring the story, I'll bring the questions. This has been The Sane Estate. I'm John Woolforth. Until next time, stay kind, stay curious, but most of all, stay sane.
And next time we can produce a more optimistic show, maybe.
We're hoping.
Yeah.